busy ways. I began to visit different Latin King sections throughout the city and suburbs with the older King brothers. The section I enjoyed the most was Chinatown. It was a totally new experience for me, a different culture, a different way of life, and still Latin King territory. The Kings of Chinatown, with many Chinese members, had heard of my fame as a gang member. They welcomed me and extended an invitation to return and party with them. I loved the Oriental food, their mannerisms, and their women. Unlike the women that hung out with the Puerto Rican kings, the Oriental women weren't as quick to offer themselves. There was a mystery. The ones that did were always spoken for when I came around. I had such a desire to experience sex with an Oriental woman that I began looking for ways to get to Chinatown. Then I met Cindy. Cindy was the sister of a Latin king, Chinita, I called her. She was gorgeous with a shy smile. Chinita was different from any other woman I had ever met. She knew right from the start that my intentions in befriending her were sexual. Unlike others, Cindy didn't threaten me into respecting her. She didn't even mention it. Instead, Cindy earned my respect by demonstrating the respect she had for herself to others and to me. And an inappropriate action, such as an attempt to touch her, would cause Cindy to walk off. Chinita became a good friend of mine. I loved talking to her. Cindy got me interested in school again. I decided to try to enroll the following year. She promised to help me earn respectable grades. All you have to do, she said, is have that desire. I wish I had listened. As winter grew colder, my visits to Chinatown became fewer. Finally, Cindy and I became phone friends. Just before winter ended, the gang wars flared up again. Innocent people were being killed because of the colors they wore or where they were standing. Anything that could be mistaken as gang affiliation could get a person killed. 2 students standing at a bus stop on their way to school were shot to death because they were standing next to a gang insignia drawn on a wall. One of the students just so happened to be wearing the same colors that belonged to the gang that was represented on the wall. The students had no gang affiliation. A Latin king from the Beach and Spalding Street section was also killed. Plans for revenge were discussed at the weekly meetings. I didn't want to join anybody else's planned hit. I felt safer and more confident doing my own thing. Most of the time, I was asked to be the trigger man anyway. Granted, it was mostly because of my big mouth, but still I was the one initiating the action, so what difference did it make? While the kings of Cadezi and Armitage were talking about waiting for warmer weather, I thought a wintertime hit would be more appropriate. The last snow of the year was falling. It was a blizzard. It snowed so hard and so heavily that you could barely see 5 feet in front of you. Everything was hidden by the snow. To me, it was perfect weather to make a hit. I had an Eskimo-style coat that winter. The hood on it nearly covered my whole face. I walked up Humboldt Boulevard, through the park, and down Division Avenue toward Western Avenue. There was nobody around. I carried a can of spray paint, a bottle of wine, and my .357 Magnum. As I approached Maplewood Street in Division, I saw about 4 people standing on the corner. As I got closer, I could see that there were 5 guys and they were Cobras. I clenched the gun inside my pocket, put my head down, and walked hurriedly like somebody wanting to get out of the cold. As I was crossing Maplewood toward the guys, I tried to pull out the gun, but it got stuck in my pocket. Both sides, bags, one of them called out as I walked by. They were selling bags of weed. I walked right by them. They paid me no mind. Once I got past them, I pulled out the gun and the spray paint. I started writing my name on the wall. I wrote Little Local, LKN, in big, bold letters. Finally, one of the Cobras noticed what I was doing and alerted the others. Cobra was the first thing that they said. King Love Almighty was my response as I pointed the gun toward them and began shooting. There were screams. Whether they were from pain or fear, I don't know. I didn't stick around to find out. I did hear retaliatory shots as I ran toward Western. I went by the Lords' clubhouse only to find out it no longer existed. The Lords were now hanging out on Claremont Street in North. The Cobras had made them move. I went to Western and North and hopped the bus back to Cadezi and Armitage. I went straight to Locas and fell asleep. Nobody came by to scold me about doing things on my own this time. Meetings became few and far between that winter. The clubhouse no longer existed. King brothers were getting locked up left and right. The Latin kings began losing their organization and respect. Other gangs became stronger and bolder in their actions against the kings. It became common to go out and find that a rival gang had vandalized the walls in our hood with their insignias. Officer James was no longer on the payroll and became a cop to be feared. He loved busting kings. It was only because of the activities of brothers like myself with nothing better to do than the Latin Kings of Cadezzi and Armitage remained a section to be reckoned with. In summer, the wars escalated, and so did my involvement with the Kings. Again, I was asked to be the leader of the Pee Wee Kings of Cadezzi and Armitage. Again, I declined the position. I was then promoted to the juniors. I began making pretty good money selling weed, and I started experimenting with other crimes as well. Burglary became my money-making crime of choice. Daffy was my partner in crime. He was very good at it. Daffy could climb like Spider-Man and break doors open by pushing them with his legs. Every burglary we attempted was successful. Cubana's closet was full of electronics and jewelry. I gave a lot of stolen merchandise away as gifts to girls I wanted, but mostly I sold the stuff. I spent whatever money I made as quickly as I got it, getting high. My life was just one big party. Promiscuous sex, heavy drugs and alcohol, dodging bullets. What more could a 16-year-old boy ask for? The more criminally active I was, the more popular I became with my peers. The local news stations began reporting on the savagery of the Latino youth. Gang colors, hand signs, and graffiti were all covered on television. Most of the information reported was inconsistent or fabricated. Gangbangers avoided reporters and their cameras like the plague. Reporters didn't care. They would walk up to any kid with colored shoelaces who was willing to be on television. The result was that kids ignorant of the ways of the gangs told stories that they had heard as if they had first-hand experience. These kids ended up as targets for gang members at school as well as in their own neighborhoods. Without realizing it, the news medias had endangered the lives of these kids. The media had a direct impact on kids deciding to join gangs. Actual gang members knew better than to display themselves for the world to see. The few who made that mistake were dealt with violently by their own gangs. The innocent kids who didn't know enough to talk to the reporters became the victims of gang media hype. Kids who otherwise shied away from gang activity were now looking to join a gang for protection. An imperial gangster suspected of being the triggerman in Morena's murder was killed. His funeral was held at Caribbean Funeral Home on Armitage near Central Park. This was a gangster hood. The Kings were determined not to let him rest in peace. A meeting was called involving all Latin Kings on the north side, and a plan was made to disrupt the funeral. All of us were told to make sure to be present on Cadezzi and Armitage the day after the meeting. That was the day the wake was being held for the dead gangster. Nobody knew what was going to happen. We were told only to show up. That night, I dreamt I was walking with Morena up Cadezzi when she got shot. She fell on top of me and said, "It's your fault." I woke up screaming, "No, no, no." Cubana held me, but I pushed her away violently. My body was shaking, my head hurt, and my vision was blurry. I saw Morena enter through the bedroom door. I jumped off the bed and hugged her legs. I'm sorry, please forgive me," I cried. I felt a hand run through my hair and a woman's voice said, it's okay, come on, get up." It was Loca. She had come to see why I was screaming. Both Cubana and Loca looked at me with compassion. I started getting high while I waited for all the brothers to show up. By noon, hundreds of Latin Kings had shown up and were headed toward Caribbean Funeral Home. We went by car, bike, and on foot. The idea was to arrive there all at the same time from every direction. The gangsters were caught by surprise. They could be seen running every which way as we approached the funeral home. We blocked off the road to both people and cars. Many King brothers had guns pulled out. They were watching the rooftops and guarding gangways against gangsters. Several King brothers went inside the funeral home and carried the dead body out with them. The mother of the dead gangster was screaming and begging for mercy. Her cries went unheard. The body was thrown in the middle of the street and repeatedly shot. Then everyone scattered. No one was arrested. It was time to celebrate our victory in avenging Morena's death so memorably. We wanted to send out a message that the Kings should not be messed with, but this didn't happen. Action against the Kings not only continued, it escalated. As for me, I had another scene added to my nightmares. Night after night, I saw myself being thrown on the street. I heard my mother screaming, and I woke up just before I was shot.